coming up next on Beyond Elementals.
For most of us, the notion of fairies as a real paranormal phenomenon is a rather comical or quaint idea that brings more of a smile than a look of serious consideration. Fairies are a part of a general category of paranormal creatures known as elementals, and it may surprise one to learn that there are a large number of serious sightings or contact with elementals reported every year all over the world. Unfortunately, the most famous fairy reports are hoaxes, which have discredited what seems to be the most honest reports, some of which have not been as benign as one may expect. Another part of fairy lore that detracts from the serious nature of the phenomenon is the fact that we have grown up with children's fairy tales, which, although inspirational and evocative, tend to be excellent educational devices, rather than indications of a world of supernatural gnomes, goblins, dwarfs, leprechauns, and fairies that seriously cohabit this wonderful and mysterious planet along with us. In this episode, we intend to look at the traditional impressions of fairies and elementals before raising the bar and looking much deeper into a subject that seems to come from the furthest reaches of the lands beyond. Many of us have formulated our sense of right and wrong at a very early age from the enchanting fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen. They are wonderful tales populated by myriads of wonderful creatures such as gnomes, goblins, trolls, fairies, and other mystical inhabitants of the dense forests, shadowy woods, foggy bogs, misty fields, mysterious lakes, and dark mountains. They are powerful stories that stay with us our entire lives because they tap into our primal fears of the unknown. Small but dangerous predators of the human, imprinted into the genetic memory that tells us to beware lifting a rock or of what may drop on us from a branch above, or strike at us from behind that tree, or slither over our neck as we sleep, or crawl quickly over one's face as one is stirring from a deep sleep. They also stay with us as educational cautionary tales that teach us to be aware of the dangers of the world, to never accept candy from strangers or whatever. The phenomenon has also suffered greatly from hoaxes, such as the Cottingley fairies, when some creative sisters used emerging camera technology to convince the world they were communing with fairies. They convinced a lot of people as to their authenticity, including author of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But are these creatures only the stuff of hoaxes, folklore, and imagination? Do they have a basis in reality? Is that an idea too crazy to even consider? People don't like to admit to elemental sightings for fear of ridicule, so they downplay it or stay mum. When one does report an elemental sighting, one considers the repercussions very carefully. Yet even under this influence of self-censorship, still, thousands of reports are made by people around the world every year. People who have claimed to have actually seen and even interacted with such creatures. Could it be that their minds are merely recalling fairy tales of their childhoods? Or perhaps that they are merely attention-seeking people with developing personality disorders? Or are their reports real? We think that they are a little of each. But if only 1% of these elemental reports are real, what are they, and where do they come from? Undoubtedly, the history of the subject is integrally bound up with the forest and mountain cultures. Geography that would make sense of small, shadowy creatures that hide behind rocks or trees or even leaves. So generally, the elemental cultures are not connected with central plains or desert environments where typically the geography inspires myths of giants or invisible forces. In forest cultures, fear of what lives in a shadow behind a tree where visibility is severely limited logically leads to hobgoblin conjecture. Cultural items are easily eliminated from potential reality, yet folklore attributes creatures that are seen by reliable observers and are often observed in homes all over the world. Millions of people claim to have the experience of seeing some small shape moving quickly across the peripheral vision in the corner of an eye, or to catch a glimpse of a small humanoid creature that retreats into a shadow, or a small strange light that quickly disappears. It is also arguable that the 5 million or so sightings of small gray humanoids with large eyes that visit people in their bedrooms at night are not necessarily aliens, but more likely a strange elemental creature that has been reported in cultures all over the world for millennia. In fact, there is likely a factual base for the small humanoid creature. A remarkable archaeological discovery in 2004 on the Indonesian island of Flores revealed the skeletal remains of a dwarf man similar to modern humans. Carbon dating and other discoveries proved that this small humanoid coexisted with modern man and may have survived until fairly recently. In the light of this discovery, Indonesian folk tales of the little people are being reevaluated, and questions are being asked that propose these abnormally small people have been living with us all along. This is further supported by the Iron Age underground dwellings in Scotland, which have been excavated and prove a small race of humans living there from about 1000 BC. They had a language distinct from other inhabitants of the area and lived in underground turf-topped houses and would have appeared to have emerged from the earth. Locally, there has been a vibrant fairy culture, and locals still refer to these dwellings as fairy houses. So there is some proof that historically supports a race of little people, which might indicate some sort of genetic memory coming into play. So for the purpose of this examination of fairies, we intend to put aside the tales of larger alien-sized creatures for another episode and another finding, which is currently being researched. In this episode, we want to look at other examples, the smaller Tinkerbell version of fairy reports. Examples such as the fairy lights, which has presented us with some very compelling evidence. So having set aside genetic memories and anything that might be confused with alien encounters, we are left with some very compelling encounters with small creatures which merit serious investigation.
Yeah, I came home one night, and right in here, I was just sitting right in the middle of the light here. You could just see it. Oh, an inch long. Little thing about this high. It was just gold, and it just shone. It was there just for a moment, and you could see it, and then it was gone. And at first I thought there was reflection from the light being on, but it was not on. There wasn't a light on in our whole yard, and that's why it would show up so well. It's very dark in here at night without lights.
When we consider these descriptions, we are drawn to conclude that this may be the luminescent orb phenomenon that Beyond has captured on camera hundreds of times at haunted sites. We have linked this seemingly sentient energy with cerebral plasma, which survives bodily death. It gives off a strong electromagnetic field, and it radiates as heat, which is 10 degrees hotter than the surrounding atmosphere. We have also noted that these orbs can have an emotional impact on a human being, especially if they enter the body or head. Then there are also the sightings that indicate some form of small flying creature with wings of the kind seen here in these remarkable photos. These photos were taken at different times thousands of miles apart, and yet they reveal stunningly similar creatures. Could it be that perhaps these creatures have yet to be officially discovered? Rather like the transparent flying rods, which have been documented in cave environments all over the world. Beyond has also captured some interesting images when recording B-rolls for the Christmas episode of Beyond. As Old Father Christmas moves forward from the fog, what is this object that travels across the bottom of a frame? Interestingly enough, Old Father Christmas has always been associated with pagan practices and was involved with pagan rituals that honored elementals. One of the features of this location was that the owner had actually created a garden to honor the fairy culture.
We were canoeing and we stopped along this riverbank. And when we were walking, we found a leaf that used to have a cocoon on the end of it. You know, those little weird bumps they had, stuck in the ground, sticking straight up. And the sand around it had turned pink and purple. And there looked like little footprints in a circle around the leaf. Little tiny indentations, like little feet, all the way around it.
Like it hatched from it or something.
That's what I thought. And there was a whole bunch, there were even adults there that saw that. And we were all wondering. Because it was the only place on the beach that had pink and purple sand in a little circle.
I do see pixies in my room.
Oh, really? Like fairies?
Yeah. Occasionally, I do have a little bit of chocolate in my room.
No, I know.
Busted.
Well, it's chocolate. Who doesn't like it? And then in the morning, it'll be like 2 small pieces, and in the morning I'll find half of it nibbled or something, but I share food with them because they don't ever get sick. I woke up from a nap and they were putting on a puppet show for me, and I'm just like, cool.
Yeah, and their little lights are different colors, and they're really, really pretty colors.
Sometimes they blink on and off, depending on their mood.
I had a friend, Judy. She said that she saw fairies in her backyard. But what was cool was before she told me that, I think it was the night before, I had a dream where I went to her house, like almost like I was astral traveling, I think maybe, but I went to her house, I was in her backyard, and I was dancing in the circle with all these fairies. And I saw Judy come out, and she comes into the backyard, and she's staring at us, and she's just watching us. And the next day, I think we came into the city and we went to go visit her, and she goes, well, you know something really neat last night.
As I was sleeping one night, and I just woke up at 3 o'clock, and something said to me, go outside. Well, I'm a single mom, and I do have common sense, and I lived in the hood, and I thought, I'm not going out at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not doing that. But the urge just didn't stop. I tried to go back to sleep, and it just, like a voice in my head just kept saying, you gotta go out, you gotta go out. So here's me opening out the back door, and I had a small little backyard that was kind of surrounded with trees and stuff. And I look out in the trees, and there's these kind of little glowy lights, like 3 little pink balls and 1 little gold ball. And it's floating in the trees, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm hallucinating. I mean, or maybe there's some kind of Christmas lights or something in the trees. I don't know where they came from, but must be there. So I go out to the trees, and I almost get my nose on these things, and they're floating, like they're just floating, and I feel really peaceful. I feel really joyous. I feel just really safe, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm nuts. So I go and I call my daughter, and she's going, Mom, it's in the middle of the night. And I said, well, just come outside, just humor me. And of course, she's used to kind of doing this humor thing with Mom because different things happen to us. I didn't say a word about why we're going outside, what to look for, anything. I just said, just come to the door. And as soon as she got to the door, her mouth dropped open, her eyes got big, and she looked, oh my goodness, Mommy, there's fairies in the tree. We had never talked directly about fairies. And I just looked at her and I thought, okay, what's she gonna do? And she said, Mommy, they've come to help us. And we were going through quite a bit of difficult times ourselves. And I thought, oh, okay. So she went out and she kind of just sat there. We sat there for, I think, probably a good hour. And I thought, wow, what a great experience. And I thought, going to be the end of it. Well, for 3 nights in a row, the same thing happened. And she would wake up at the same time I would wake up. And we would go out and we would sit in our backyard and we would just sit with these fairies. And it was amazing. We felt a lot safer. Things started to go a lot easier in our lives. I was going through a very difficult divorce. And things just started to click for us a lot better. Well, we left the house and we moved somewhere else, and we sort of made this nice little arrangement for the fairies. And when we left the house, I left a lot of the stuff there. Just thinking, I want to make sure they're okay. And we went out and thanked them, and Well, lo and behold, we moved to another place, and next night we moved in, I again got woken up at 3 o'clock, and they were back out there. So they've kind of followed us around. They're always there. I think part of my lesson in life is to lighten up, not get so worried about things, know that I'm going to be taken care of. So whenever in my life that I seem to get kind of frustrated or worried or focusing on what's going to happen, it's like they pop up. And I've always been curious about them and have worked somewhat with Native elders, and in their tradition, of course, they do believe in the little people. And they believe that they are here to help us and assist us, and if we're struggling or going through difficult times, that we can call on that energy. And that the earth actually they replicate energy from the earth, like tree energy or flower energy. So there's like a more solidness, for instance, with the tree energy, a more softer energy with the flowers, and that people are losing contact with that type of an energy. That the native people, of course, are closer to the earth. It's not been as many generations, but for those of us that have moved from further generations, we've lost contact. And so part of what the elementals try to do is to reestablish us with the earth and reestablish us with that energy and wake us up to what we are doing to the earth. They will never cross your boundaries. They'll never sort of implant themselves on you or push you in a direction. You have to ask. And I think that's part of the connection that's also been lost, is that we, in a very individualistic society, it's all been taught that we need to do it on our own, listen to ourselves, not trust the spiritual. And I think these types of energy are there to say, hey, you know, we're there to help you. But again, my angels do love to play, and they play not only with me, but they play with my husband. And so if we're getting a little worried again about something or a little frustrated, they'll pick up something and it'll just be gone. I mean, your car keys or my husband's glasses. He just bought a new pair of glasses and he went to put them on. They were gone. We turned the house upside down, inside out. They were gone. And about 2 months later, he walked into our bedroom. In the middle of the bedroom floor, on a mat, were his glasses, all just folded nice and neatly.
That's okay. And talking about elementals, I don't know why this happened, but when I was in Lucia, I got the biggest turnip you ever saw. I thought, oh, we can have about 4 meals out of this one. So I took it to Ormiston, I put it in the sink, and the phone rang. So I went and answered the phone. I came back, the turnip was gone, and I never did find it. Never. My daughter was there, and she had seen the turnip, and then it was gone. Now that is the weirdest. Had it been some little thing, I'd say, oh well, it rolled here, it rolled there. But I looked everywhere, never found it.
Was that big?
Yeah, it was the biggest one I'd ever seen. Because that's why I say I think the wall is getting thinner between us and the other side.
One, I named him Nimbo, actually. He hides some of my stuff, like, I lost a pair of gold hoop earrings a long time ago, and then the next day I'm just like, Nimbo, I have something important coming up and I need my earrings. Can you just set them on my bed when I come home from school today? And then I come into my room to do my homework, and they're just sitting there, and I'm just like, thanks.
Next time on Beyond Triangles. In this 4th season of Beyond, we will examine some of the major myths and legends of the paranormal, many of which have woven themselves into the fabric of our culture. Many are interconnected with other subjects in this and other seasons of Beyond. Sometimes the research leads to answers. Sometimes answers from science, sometimes from spiritual realms, sometimes from somewhere in between. Mysteries that inspire the imagination and compel us to seek an answer. Beyond.
Fairy culture obviously has a lot more going on for it than simply child culture or environmental folklore. Neither is it easily assigned to memories of a race of small humans that once lived on the planet. We found in our investigations that huge numbers of people are reporting contact with small humanoids, tiny lights, miniature shadow figures, and glimpses of such creatures in the corners of one's eye. To call them fairies or goblins, however, is not in vogue because of all the Cottingley fakes or fear of sounding too flaky. So this leaves the witness too vulnerable to ridicule. To close one's mind to this or any phenomenon, however, is self-restricting and limiting. After all, the open mind is without doubt the first to recognize the truth, and sometimes even the shadow of the truth is what leads to the ultimate fact. The phenomenon is real, and it's been happening since prehistoric times. It is somehow connected with the ancient sites and the UFO phenomenon. The absence of the discovery of a single fairy skeleton may lead one to conclude that these creatures do not exist. However, some may argue that it is just as reasonable to conclude that they are either spirits, non-corporeal shadow entities, or perhaps even extra-dimensional. When we started working on this episode, we were surprised to discover that 3 of our crew members had encounters with fairies and are very assertive in regarding the validity of the event. University of Glasgow's historian Lizanne Henderson, who has been doing a study on fairy tradition, confesses that she has been shocked by the number of people who have approached her regarding personal experiences with fairies. When she started her study, she assumed it was a dead tradition. It is not a dead tradition, but it is far from being a proven phenomenon, and at least for the present, remains filed under uncertain in an old Dickensian drawer somewhere far beyond.